Okay, welcome back, everybody. Thanks again for joining us in the training, learning, and development community and our event transitioning to learning and development happening all this week. I'm just going to double check here and make sure we've got folks rolling in. Oh, yeah, I'm seeing that number just pop up. Excellent. All right, thanks for joining us. This week has been absolutely fantastic so far. I would say that this is definitely one of the best events that the TLDC has produced, just with the amount of energy and the feedback and just overall the messaging surrounding all of it. It's been so positive and so wonderful. So I want to thank everybody for that. The speakers, everybody at the virtual tables. Really, it's been great. And that said, we have another great speaker that is going to be starting in just a moment. Heidi Kirby. Heidi actually spearheaded our first event that was related to teachers transitioning into L&D. It was like the road to L&D happened. I think it was in February of this year. That one was great too. If you can go back to those recordings. In fact, let me just grab that link real quick and I will paste that into chat so you all can take advantage of that one. It was really, really fantastic with some stellar speakers as well. It was a single day event, so it was a little different, but it was wonderful. So check that out. And today, Heidi's going to be talking about how to gain useful ID experience before you get the job, which is, of course, something I think this entire audience is really needs to hear. Let me tell you a little bit about Heidi. Heidi is based in Cleveland, Ohio. She's a customer education manager and PhD candidate in instructional design and technology. How's that PhD candidacy going, Heidi?
I'm defending this semester.
All right. She also hosts the Block podcast. That's Building, Learning, and Organizational Culture podcast, and co-authors the Useful Stuff newsletter for L&D professionals. She got her started as a college professor, but has since worked as an instructional designer and L&D manager for NASA, a large health insurance company, and in tech companies. And with that, Heidi, I'm going to go ahead and hide myself from the stage and let you take it away.
Thank you. Yeah, so today we're talking about how to get useful ID experience. And as Luis already mentioned, all of these things about me, I was a college professor. That's how I got started in L&D. And I'm now a college professor, again, teaching podcasting courses for the University of Florida. And also, like Luis mentioned, I'm the co-founder of Useful Stuff and the Useful Stuff newsletter for L&D professionals with my L&D bestie, Matt Smith, and host of the Block Building, Learning, and Organizational Culture podcast. And special hello to Bella and Aldo, my IDs that I currently work with at Pantheon. I see them here in the chat. And I'm super passionate about helping new and aspiring IDs. And I will say, please bear with me. I've had COVID since Monday, so my brain is still a little bit slow, and I may have to mute to cough or to take a drink. So please just bear with me, and we're going to go through this as quickly and painlessly as possible. The other thing is, I would love for you all to go ahead and contribute your ideas as we kind of go through the topics here and talk about the different kinds of experience. Go ahead and share in the chat some of your ideas or things that you've done, ways that you've gotten experience, because I want us to just walk away with a really robust list of ways that we can all get more experience, because I'm sure you've seen it. We want you to have experience in instructional design, but it's an entry-level job, and I've never worked in instructional design. So how do I do these things, right? So before we get started, I want to talk about a couple things to consider before we think about getting that experience, right? The most important thing is to start building relationships. And the first thing I have on here is don't cold sell. And what do I mean by that? I get a lot of messages in my LinkedIn inbox from all sorts of different things, right? People trying to sell me things, people asking questions, people who are peers or people who are new or aspiring instructional designers. And I want to answer all the things and I want to talk to all the people. But the worst is when I get a message from someone I've never talked to before and they're like, hey, I want to be an ID and do you have any work for me? And I don't have a relationship with the person and I've never talked to them before. And so for me, as somebody who works with a lot of different aspiring IDs and volunteers my time, I would always give an opportunity that I find to somebody that I've actually talked to and built a relationship with before somebody who's just randomly reached out and said, hey, can I work with you? So you want to make sure that you're building those relationships, that you're asking those questions first, that you're, networking with people. And there's kind of this, you may have heard it before, there's kind of this rule of threes with networking, that you should network with the people who are on the same journey as you, right? So other aspiring IDs who are where you want to be. So whatever the role is that you're looking for, you want to find people who are already in that role. And then who are where you want to be in a few years. So if you want to be a senior ID or a freelancer or own your own consultancy or be a manager, connect with all these different kinds of people and take the time to get to know these people in your network. So start posting on LinkedIn, start, commenting on other people's posts, and really take the time to build those relationships before you start asking people for time and investment and things like that. I think that's really key. The other thing you want to think about is that the different things I'm going to share today don't always fit the design and development skill set that IDs need, right? But it's about so much more than that, right? Needs analysis. How do we collaborate with subject matter experts and stakeholders? How do we gain support and buy-in for the different solutions that we're coming up with and ideas that we have? How do we manage a project from beginning to end? So I think a lot of times instructional design gets oversimplified to like development and storyline and that very kind of narrow focus. But we really want to think about all the different skills that go into being an instructional designer and all of the different places where we can get experience. Okay, so we're already talking about this a little bit in the chat. That's why I said you probably already know this one, volunteering, right? It isn't always an option. It isn't always for everyone, but volunteering is probably the easiest way. But I've also seen some people put themselves out there in a way that may not be the best way. So I've seen people just post on LinkedIn like, hey, I want to be an instructional designer and I'm volunteering my time. So reach out to me. I have 10 hours a week free and I'll help you do whatever it is that you need to do. If you have a small network, this may not get the reach that you want it to get because of the LinkedIn algorithm, right? You may not be visible to the kinds of people who you want to, volunteer with. And you may also run into a problem where you do find someone who says, oh, hey, I this is perfect. I need a training. Can you make this training? And they'll order a training from you, right? And you won't really get to do the full process or have any autonomy over the project, right? So volunteering at your school. A lot of people are saying this in the chat already. Identifying a problem at your school or volunteering to do, if you're K through 12 or higher ed, volunteering to do PD. That's what I did when I was first trying to make the career switch. I've yet to see people volunteer to do PD who haven't been welcomed with like a, yes, please do. So you can then take that opportunity to create that professional development. And especially if you're a K through 12 teacher, you can get that experience creating learning experiences for other adults, right? So that's within your workplace. You can figure out if there's a way, a stretch project, PD, things like that. But also outside of your work, a lot of people just say, hey, volunteer with a nonprofit, but some people don't really know where to start with that. So if you're part of a religious institution, or you've joined a small political group, or you're part of a cause, right? If there's a cause that you really care about, those are the kinds of groups and areas where they need help. They're looking for volunteers. They're asking new members or new volunteers, like, what is your skill set? How can you help me? And you can really find different ways to use that, gain that experience, and use your knowledge to not only get the experience, but to like work on a cause that you actually care about and are actually passionate about. And it'll be really great to have that kind of win-win situation for everybody, right? And then there are also ID volunteer groups specifically to help instructional designers get experience. I think Shira mentioned in the chat that Ed App is one of them. They kind of ebb and flow. So I used to know about more. I think a couple of them have kind of faded away. But one of the ones that a former team member always highly suggests is Rumie, Rumie, where you volunteer with them and they have you create content for their platform and work through the instructional design process. So there's a few different ways to PD is professional development. So if you have professional development days as a K through 12 teacher or as a higher ed college professor, those are some ways that you can go ahead and help. And then you can also help an expert. So what do I mean by this? We all know people who have expertise in something, right? Maybe you have a friend who is a financial services advisor, or you have a cousin who's a child psychologist, or you know people in your circle who have different areas of expertise. And maybe they're interested in creating content and putting content out there and teaching other people their expertise. Maybe they're interested in monetizing that expertise, but they don't necessarily know how to create content or where to start, right? Not everyone is a content creator. So you could always reach out to the people you know that have a particular expertise and are interested in sharing that with others, and you can help them create blogs and videos and courses and programs and live events and all of the things to help teach others their expertise. And again, it's mutually beneficial, right? You're helping them build their brand and monetize their expertise, and then you're also getting that ID experience. And if they publish a course or they have live events, you can link out to those things on your portfolio and say, hey, I helped this person create this thing. You can also find a partner. So someone who is on the same path as you, another aspiring ID. I actually know a lot of IDs who did this when they were first starting out. They would pair up, and this whole event is a great way to meet people for this. But they would pair up with another aspiring ID. So maybe if you're having trouble getting through to nonprofits or people in nonprofits, I saw that come through the chat. If you're having trouble figuring out where to start, or there's not a lot of volunteer opportunities in your area, pair up with someone, right? Someone else may know of a ton of different opportunities, but they may not have a ton of time to work on a project. If you put your heads together, you can not only work on something with someone else and practice giving each other feedback, but you also get that kind of teamwork experience, that project management experience, because now you have more than one on a project. You have to go through that. You have to, figure out the roles, who's going to do what, how you're going to split things up. And it's just a really great way to get that kind of experience and to build a relationship and to build your network. And make sure, though, that if you do this, that you take notes and you record everything about what it's like to work together, so that you can put that story in your portfolio, or you can talk about it in interviews or things like that. And it's a really great way to just leverage your skills and the other person's skills and to like figure out what some of those different skill gaps are as well. So great way to gain skills, experience, knowledge, all of the above. And then of course, if you're like, I don't really want to, I don't really want to volunteer yet. I don't really know. You can always just create your own product, right? You have your own expertise and skill set as well, right? So you can create courses or events or programs on what you already know. So how to create a lesson plan, how to have a tough conversation with a parent, or, how to deal with a disruptive student, things like that, that you already know, that you can go ahead and create your own courses on, your own content on, your own products, and you can use those as your portfolio. Or if you want, you can monetize those, right? You can make your own website or however. And I see a quick question that I want to answer. How do we work the analysis elements into this type of project? So because it is your expertise and you're working as the subject matter expert and also the ID, it might be good to figure out what are the kinds of content that you know about that people are looking for. So you might talk to other educators, you might talk to other people who would be your potential audience, right? Figure out what they're looking for, what they need help with, what they're nervous about, what's the hardest part of what they do. And once you start asking those different things and asking those questions, then you can kind of figure out, okay, this is maybe the area that I see the most opportunity in. And then you can use that analysis as part of your portfolio as well, and say, here are the, I talked to 10 teachers in my district. Here are the problems that they were facing. And here's why I decided to create this content based on that. And again, you can, if you want, you can monetize it, and you can have, once you get your new ID job, you can also have, you can have your side hustle be all of this extra content that you've created as well. Solve a problem. Someone already mentioned this in chat too, that they saw a problem within their school district and they pitched a learning solution for that. So if you see a gap at your job, if you hear, we hear things, right? We hear people keep complaining about this one thing over here, or people know that this is a well-known problem over here. You can pitch a learning solution. You can say, hey, I'd like to create something, or I'd like to address this problem and maybe help with training or whatever. But you can also offer problem solving to family or friends, right? We talk about these things, right? This actually happened to me. I was chatting with a friend and they were telling me about how some poor person at their job fell victim to a phishing scam and ended up buying like a bunch of gift cards at a local store and spending a bunch of their own personal money. And they totally fell into like a work phishing scam. And I said, didn't you have any like cybersecurity training or training that would help prevent this? And they said, oh no, we're a really small company. We don't have to do any training like that. And I said, well, you probably should. And so I ended up putting together just a quick, like 1-page training proposal of, hey, if you're looking for cybersecurity training, here's what that might look like. And here's, so you can also do that, just having different conversations with people and seeing what the needs are. Or, if you say what field you're in or what fields you're going into, a lot of people like to tell us about not fun e-learning that they've taken. So, or not fun training problems that they've encountered, right? So there's opportunities there too, where you see a problem, look for the problems and look for ways to solve them. And Bella is giving some amazing advice right now on portfolio websites. But yeah, there's a building an e-learning portfolio session tomorrow. So we're not going to talk too much about portfolios today. Okay, so this one maybe isn't going to give you that very specific design and development experience, but finding a mentor is a great way to find out what the role of an ID is really like, right? It'll allow you to ask questions about what kind of skills are needed. It'll allow you to get some feedback on your work, on your skill set, where you can kind of create a professional development plan. But again, I will say, please don't reach out to random people and ask them to be your mentor. There's a chance they might say yes, but I think, again, that it's really important to build those relationships and to start by having conversations first before you ask someone to dedicate their time to you as a mentor. So maybe if there's somebody who has interacted with you a lot on LinkedIn, who's been particularly helpful, who's spent a lot of time answering your questions, who's, taken the time to have some Zoom chats with you, maybe you feel comfortable enough to ask that person to be your mentor. The other way is to start posting, right? Start connecting with people, start talking about what you're doing to upskill, what you're doing to learn more. And the more you're commenting on other people's things, like Joelle's saying in the chat, the more you're active, the more people will offer some mentoring, or you can just, put out the bat signal, right? If you have enough people in your network, you can say, hey, I'm looking for. And another thing I would suggest is let people know what kind of commitment you're looking for, because sometimes people are hesitant to offer when they don't know how much time is being expected. So, say something like, hey, I was wondering if you'd be willing to give me an hour of your time every other week to go over things that I'm working on and to just talk to me more about what you do day to day, right? And by setting that expectation, it's more likely that someone will feel comfortable saying, oh yeah, sure, I'll mentor you. And there are so many wonderful people in the L&D field that are willing to help. And I'm sure you've all seen that. You've seen that in this event right here, right? But finding a mentor is a really great way to get that feedback and to hone those skills. And again, maybe not so much with the design and development piece, but helping out at events like this or presenting at events. I don't want to assume that everyone's ready to present at a conference, because I know that takes time, right? Especially for an introvert like me. It takes time to feel confident enough in your skills to present. But if you start joining L&D organizations like this one, there's GLDC, which is the Global Learning and Development Community. There's ATD, the Association for Talent Development. Those are just a few. Those were just the acronyms that were rattling around in my head. But depending on what country you're in, there are different L&D organizations for your specific country. And there are smaller ones. There are bigger ones. I'm sure, the links are going to be coming in the chat here for different orgs. And a lot of those bigger organizations have conferences like this one, big ones, smaller ones. And then a lot of the smaller L&D agencies are now putting on events or conferences as well. So I know people like Tom McDowell and Vanessa from Anchored Learning. Sorry, Vanessa. Put on conferences as well. So they're a little bit smaller scale, but that's even better for new and aspiring IDs, because they're not looking for the speakers who've written 3 books and have 20 years of experience, right? So as you build your network, as you start meeting new people, you're going to see all these different conferences. And if you're not ready to present, you can join the board of your local organization. You can help go through the conference proposals for people who are speaking. And then there are so many logistics that go into putting on an event like this that you can just volunteer to help with that stuff, right? Just the logistics, just putting things on. And the best part is you're going to meet other L&D professionals. You're going to learn about what their skill sets are. You're going to learn about the skills needed for the field. You'll get, free access to certain events if you're volunteering and helping with events and things like that. So another great way to gain experience that's a little bit outside of like the traditional storyline experience, right? All right, so that's what I have for you all today. You can find the Block Podcast on pretty much any major podcasting platform. It's BLOC, but you can also find it at the Buzzsprout website, blockpod.buzzsprout.com. And then if you are interested in useful stuff for L&D professionals, issue 2 of Useful Stuff is forthcoming, and it's going to be all about how to find out what people need. So if you go to usefulstuff.email, you can sign up for that newsletter. And of course, please connect with me on LinkedIn. I'm throwing my link in the chat here. Thank you, Anchored Training with Vanessa. Thank you. And yeah, I'd love to hear any questions that you have.
I'm taking a look to see. Let's give it a second. Yeah. I do want to mention too, when you're talking about the conferences, even some of the bigger events like ATD ICE and Tech Knowledge, and then of course with the Learning Guild and DevLearn and Learning Solutions, their expos are usually free or really low cost. And I know with the Guild in particular, we used to offer sessions within the expo area, like a full day's worth of sessions. So you could potentially, if you're like, say, in Vegas or in Orlando, where these bigger events are held, you could go to these events for free and basically take full days worth of sessions. Mostly, of course, they're going to be tool focused, but it's still a great way to network and to learn more about what is available out there in the L&D world as far as tools and vendors and stuff. All right, here we got one. Is from Kate. Is part of a project good to include in a portfolio even if you didn't complete the project?
I'm going to give you the very vague answer of it depends. I think it depends on the story that you tell with that part of the project, right? I think that if it's not to completion, maybe you explain why, or I guess I would just want to know more about like why it wasn't completed. Was it a prototype or whatever? But as long as you explain that and you explain your process to create that piece of the project, I think it would be okay.
Yeah. One thing that I'm thinking about is, like, say, for instance, if maybe part of the project wasn't, you weren't allowed to release it to the public or something like that. Maybe, I don't know. All right, let's see. And got another one from Rima. Can you find a job directly as an instructional designer, or is there any other stepping stone like being a content writer?
You can do it however you want. So yes, either way, you can be a content writer or a curriculum designer or any other, an LMS administrator, right? There's a million paths into ID, but you absolutely can find a job directly as an ID too.
Yes, definitely. I'm surprisingly, I've interviewed, I don't know, I feel like hundreds of people since I've been doing TLDC. It's surprising how many people have gone from working in the theater to all of a sudden like accidentally stepping into instructional design. Surprisingly enough, like stage managers and stuff. So that's an interesting one. All right, got one from Cecilia here. I'm seeing many people land ID roles who had corporate experience prior to their K through 12 classroom experience. I've done some volunteer projects, but I'm struggling to even get interviews. I've also had my resume redone and continue to update it. Tips?
Reach out to me, Cecilia. Let's chat. Let's chat offline. Yeah. because I think sometimes it's just a matter of you haven't found the right opportunity yet, or there's usually a gap somewhere, right? Like maybe your resume is too teacher sounding, right? Like maybe there's not enough highlighting of like your transferable skills, or there's something missing in your portfolio, or maybe you're going for, sometimes people are going for roles that are a little too they're a little overqualified for almost. So it could be any number of things. But yeah, definitely reach out to me on LinkedIn and let's chat about it.
Cecilia says thank you. That's very
Of course.
generous of you too, Heidi. Thank you.
Yeah, of course.
Let's see here. I'm going back to chat to look. Not seeing anything in, but give it a second to see. All right. And actually, Heidi, I know since you have the COVID, we should probably let you go and get some rest. I so appreciate you staying with it.
Yeah, of course. I couldn't miss this.
Yeah, no, pretty much whenever I think about transitioning to L&D, like just helping people there, it's you and Sarah Stevick that I think about like as the highlight.
Yeah.
So yeah, thank you
Good.
so much for doing this. And everyone, we've got, what have we got? We've got some virtual tables that are going to be starting soon. Let me mention that real quick. At 10 o'clock, there's a networking volunteering table with Ricky Fisher, who has been, every time I go in there, he's got like a really, really popular table. So pop in there at 10. Also, Stephanie Diggins is going to be back talking about instructional design freelancing at another table. And then, of course, at 11 o'clock, another session. This one is with Joelle, transitioning or transition, navigating the in-between. Super excited for that one. So hopefully we'll see all of you there. And Heidi, once again, thank you so much. And we'll
Thank
see everyone next
you.
time. All right. Bye-bye.